Most people have a story in their heads about what they're supposed to be doing in life. Many people sort of go through life as a sort of their own personal movie, and they're trying to live out their conception of what they see life as. So they often have these moments in their life that are like graduate college, get a job, go to grad school, get married, get the house, have kids. The problem with that is a lot of people run out of things to aim for,
Mhm.
or they face a disruption early on in their journey and it scrambles everything. And they say, well, I don't know if I want that like sequence.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special edition of Through Conversations podcast, where we explore the truth through conversations with the most brilliant minds. Part of the truth and also my personal truth is exploring my own journey, my own truth. So there is no better guest to do that today than Paul Millard. Paul Millard joins me today, who is a visionary who walked away from a conventional success path to discover a life of meaning, freedom, and creativity. In his book, The Pathless Path, Paul shares his journey of finding oneself in the wrong path of life, having the courage to accept it, and being strong enough to chart a new course, one that would align with who he truly is. The Pathless Path is Paul's book about walking away from a perfect job, quote unquote, with a promising future and starting over again. Through painstaking experiments, living in different countries, and a deep dive into the history of our work beliefs, Paul pieces together a set of ideas and principles that guide him from unfulfilled and burned out to what he calls the pathless path, a new story for thinking about work in our lives. So join us today as we explore his profound insights gleaned from global experiments in personal transformation. This is a must listen for anyone seeking purpose, navigating uncertainty, and redefining work and life and meaning in a fast changing world. So, Paul, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you.
Appreciate it. That was a lovely introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. No, you deserve this and more because, like I said before recording, your ideas do resonate. I'm in a pivotal moment in my life, and you just the algorithm in a way maybe read my mind and just put me in front of you. So your ideas did help me take a leap of faith. So I appreciate you taking that time and sharing us your journey.
Yeah, yeah, I'm honored to hear that. I really appreciate that.
So, Paul, the first question is gravitating around that same theme, your trajectory. And I'm curious, our listeners who don't really know you that much as
Mm.
I do, how would you introduce your trajectory, your path unfolding up until today? What are some of the biggest pivotal moments in your life or eureka moments, and also some of the struggles that you found that also allowed you to reach to that diamond, that treasure, with which was that freedom, and sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, so my background is of somebody that didn't grow up in really like forced or surrounded by this success achievement narrative or world that so many people I know were kind of pushed into growing up. I was in a pretty rural area of Connecticut. My parents didn't go to college, and it was like just do good in school, go to college, and like there wasn't like much expectation, which was nice. I was always good in school, and when you're good in school, nobody is ever really concerned about you, so you're kind of just floating along. I did that until college, and that was when I first started to understand the worlds of status and
Mhm.
prestige and achievement and all these goals and accomplishments you can pursue. And I went after them. I tried to break into strategy consulting, eventually broke into that world working for some of the top firms in the industry. And at the same time, I was always this outsider, sort of like, what is this world? Why is this so weird? Um, and I think what I realize now is I had this hunger for something more than just a job.
Hmm.
Now I liked consulting. I really enjoyed learning about the business world. The first few years were amazing, but after like 5 years, you're not really like learning new skills. You're sort of just grinding through the same stuff over and over again. And the things you're nudged to do or really kind of impress clients, grovel with senior leaders and try
Mm-hmm.
to impress them, try to get promoted, play political games, all
Mm-hmm.
that just sucked the energy out of me. And I didn't want to do that. So I kept moving from job to job, trying to like reinvent and learn new things, and eventually ran out of moves. And I wouldn't say I took a bold leap. I more sort of just like ran out of energy to keep going on my former path. I mean, it's like quote unquote dream job on paper to like what other people want, but it wasn't what I wanted.
Mm.
I've since sort of discovered that I do want a little more space in my life. I don't want to design my life around continuous full-time work all of adulthood. Um, which is hard because it's not easy to make it on your own,
Mm.
carving your own path. And I'm also somebody that I think just enjoys more creative work, and writing has been so important for me. And for the past 6 years, I've been basically just trying to like make that work while also not creating another job for myself, not getting caught up in like hustle paths and these goals that other people have. Um, and it's been pretty good. I think the last 6 years have been the best 6 years of my life. And it feels amazing to have found a path which feels sustainable for my life.
Wow, Paul, you touched on so many ideas there that can be each one of those can be a podcast in itself. Hopefully, we have enough time to explore those. But you touch on so many ideas that are embedded in the workplace, particularly in American workplace, which is status games, the prestige, the impressing our bosses, the impressing, trying to impress ourselves, and also the expectations around us of who we need to become. Those kind of themes suck you, and what happens there is that we just lose ourselves and our focus, and that's not, it's no surprise that people when they reach their 50s they have a midlife crisis because they realize, a lot of people, fortunately for me, my crisis is right now in my mid 20s, and in a way I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But this, what you say right now is interesting because it's like playing for a good 40 years, a good corporate 40 years, playing this game, which is, trying to have a mask and your true self, and just having this space in between where you're playing a game, but then the game starts playing you. So, you know, when were these clues in your corporate path, in your, default path, like you say in Pathless Path, your book? How what were some of those cues that didn't really resonate with you, and how did you identify that they were kind of like a fault in not only in the system itself, but you just didn't click with it? And how did you find that courage to say, this is not for me? I rather carve my own path, because I feel like many people do feel that and they just take it as a natural law. It's just part of the world. It's just part of the corporate world. So I'm very curious to hear your insights.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I talk to a lot of people like you who are having these sort of wake up moments earlier and earlier in their life. And I think a big reason of this is that the paths many of us are on are in job paths designed around the industrial economy. And I think we're shifting away from the industrial economy towards a knowledge economy, towards a tech economy. And we don't really have new paths yet. So I think a lot of people have all these small moments all the time, right? I had so many moments when it was just like, this doesn't feel right. But for a while, it was fine. I graduated in 2007. This was like pre-social media, pre-smartphones. And for the most part, you didn't see what other people were doing, right? And so for me, when I started to get more exposed to alternative paths and start to meet independent consultants working on their own and working these weird hours and see those things, it planted seeds of like, oh, that could be something, right? And then in the mid 2010s, you started to meet more like entrepreneurs, more coaches, more people doing all these weird paths. And I think the wake up moments for me were I started to create
Mm.
after going through a health crisis. Like I just lost interest in my day jobs and like became more interested in like volunteering and advising an undergrad consulting group and like teaching and mentoring people. Writing on the side, writing on Quora, on Medium, places like that. Um, yeah, and all those things. And it all makes sense looking back now, but I really had a hard time figuring out that I wanted a different kind of path, different kind of life.
It that resonates a lot because, when like you just said, it's spot on that when you're in the midst of the storm, trying to shift that path or trying to find your own path, or maybe just like your writings, like when you say maybe just some people need that space in their life to explore what that path could look like, not necessarily hop into something else, but it doesn't seem to
Yeah.
be the case that many people give themselves that time to see what emerges, which is really insightful. What can emerge by itself? And Paul, it's really interesting that one of the pivotal moments in your life was that health crisis that you had, and that paradoxically made you, if please correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, my impression is that it gave you a new insight into building a life to give to others, to playing positive sum games, to in a way honoring your time on earth differently, not just like a cog in a machine, but like someone who can give to others, and paradoxically in that way that it's giving life to you, it's not draining you like the other paths. It was giving you life, so it was just a win-win for you. how with that how was that inflection point in your life so crucial, in the sense that you realized kind of like the urgency of trying to figure out something for you while sharing your insights for others? This win-win scenario.
Um, I I don't know if it was super intentional. I think I just sort of stumbled upon it. I mean, for the most part, nobody was reading my stuff for years. Now many more people are reading my stuff, but nothing's really changed. I write to make sense of the world. I write because it's fun, and I write because it feels like the most important work type thing I do in my life. So it just happened that other people were resonating with my stuff. And I think this is the way I think about like creating and sharing online is like just put stuff into the world and you can kind of just notice what is happening. Right. So even before 2020, I was noticing like I had some readers, not many, but like people would reach out and have these really strong reactions, like you were saying.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, that's something. That's sort of a like proof that I'm onto something. I'm remixing these ideas in a different kind of way. I should just keep going. Right. And eventually that led to a book. But like I I didn't have like a massive audience when I decided to write a book. I just decided to write a book because I felt called to it and it felt like how I wanted to spend my time. And the more I've designed for liking work, the more fun I have on my path.
Mm.
So I'm very intentional about leaning against doing anything that feels like a job. It's very easy to do stuff that feels like a job. All you need to do is just copy what most other people are doing, right? Work every day, the same hours as you would in a job. Um, Copy the ambitious extrinsic goals your
Yeah.
peers around you are chasing, and then just work a lot. It's very easy, but it's very hard to like slow down and connect with yourself and be really honest about what you care about. And what it turned out I cared about was like writing and creating space in my life to enable that writing to be good and interesting and fun and sustainable. But what that meant for me in my first couple of years of my path was that I had to dramatically lower my income. And I didn't make more than like 30 grand a year for the first 3 years. And it was great. It was the best years of my life at that point. because I started to get to know myself. I started to remember the childhood curiosities and interests, and playfulness started to reemerge in my life.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, for me, that's what it's all about. So for me, it's always come back to how can I make sure writing is a core energy in my life? How can I build a life around that? And am I okay with the costs I'm paying to keep that going? Um, which, and this is the thing people get so caught up in is like, oh, you can't do this and make money. And it's like, yeah, I agree. I don't know how to make money doing the work that matters to you. Sometimes you can get lucky. I am making money from my book now. I don't know if that's going to keep going, but I'm just going to keep writing because I don't care. I'm not doing it for the money, and I'm willing to pay the costs in terms of like not being able to live that like upper normie lifestyle in the US of like fancy house, good nice cars, like good schools. Like I don't know if we're going to be able to afford that. Um, but me and my wife are really building our lives around sort of a creative energy and creative spirit that we want to keep alive and we're willing to fight for.
Wow. What you touch on the costs, of our decisions, it's one of the most one of the least talked about conversations in the world, not only in your path, Paul, but also in the conventional path. If you would have told me at 18, hey Alex, you're gonna get the job of your life, and you will just tell me all of the upsides. You will have great access to great people, and also the prestige world. You will also have networking and potential high income, for a long period of time. I would have just signed right then and there. But if they would have told me all of the costs with them, which were, health concerns, mental concerns, social isolation, disconnection from community, from my own self, from my family, I don't know if I would have taken the deal. And we don't really,
Yeah.
right now we're getting into that inflection point, I think, on a collective scale, and also perhaps my generation more than others, that we're just realizing the cost benefit of playing the status game, the prestige games, like you say, the prestige bug, and we're all beaten by it, and we're just seeing, at least from my perspective, how precious life really is and how little time we have on earth, and just trying to carve a path, a conventional path, to impress others, or to just cope with extrinsic pressures of forging that path. Just don't do that for me anymore, and I see that with my generation more and more.
Well, I think what's happening is people are looking at their lives more holistically. I think for generations, our world was less prosperous, and you did need to sort of suffer and play by the rules to make your life work.
Mm.
But in that suffering, a lot of people undermined their own spirit, their own health, their own relationships, right? Um, and people are saying, well, I actually value those things now. How do I figure it out? So I think what's happening is we're seeing a massive global experiment of remixing of paths where people are trying to find new ways. And what I noticed is that so many people want to escape the default path, but they don't have an alternative story. And I sort of wrote the Pathless Path as an attempt of that as that alternative story. And it's not really like a roadmap. It's really just a meta story. So you can create your own pathless path. I can create my own pathless path. I think one of my dreams is that there'll be 100 sort of books like mine that are detailing other people's experiments of remixing their paths.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that also touches upon the idea that, like you say, we don't have that path yet, but we're feeling, on a collective scale, that our technologies, the internet perhaps, and also like you say, we're getting into the tech economy, into the knowledge economy, and we're just carving that path. So you might be the leader on that movement, Paul. That would be,
We'll see. Like, yeah, it feels weird. I mean, I think I was just trying to like figure stuff out for myself.
yeah,
And yeah, I guess people are looking to me as like a leader, but yeah, it's weird.
yeah. And like you say, it's just so many things are moving and so many parts in the macro and also in the personal side of the equation are just being thrown everywhere. There's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of just possibilities. And I would like to dive deep into what you said on this knowledge economy, this new path that it's forging, and how do you see that playing out, you know, right now with your own work, and also what are some of the trends or how can these self employment people, like trying to carve their freedom in this world, how can they navigate this new era?
I I think step one is really just becoming aware of what script you're running in your head. Most people have a story in their heads about what they're supposed to be doing in life. Many people sort of go through life as a sort of their own personal movie, and they're trying to live out their conception of what they see life as. So they often have these moments in their life that are like graduate college, get a job, go to grad school, get married, get the house, have kids. The problem with that is a lot of people run out of things to aim for,
Hmm.
or they face a disruption early on in their journey and it scrambles everything. And they say, well, I don't know if I want that like sequence, or these bad things happen and they don't really fit into people's narratives, right? So, one is becoming aware of like, what is work? I have people just literally write down a few sentences. What is work? Work is, and then it's like, why do I work? I work because of money. That's often one. But
Hmm.
then try to go deeper with that. What are the next four reasons? Often people really struggle. They don't know why they're doing anything. And that can be a big wake up call for people. I think next is to take action. It's to do stuff to connect with different states of being, right? A lot of people are putting too much effort into trying to make changes in their life.
Yeah.
And I love what Joe Hudson says. He runs Art of Achievement, Art of Accomplishment. He says, don't waste effort on trying,
Hmm.
right? If you're trying to effort your way through life, you're not going to have enough presence to realize what you're really feeling and what you really want. So, a lot of what I recommend is to sort of disconnect from work. I recommend things like mark off 2 hours in the middle of a day and a work day and go wander, go walk without a destination. Just see where your intuition takes you. Most people have never taken a walk without a destination in the last year.
Wow.
They only walk places to go somewhere, to meet a friend, to go do stuff, right? And you sort of realize like, oh, I'm sort of like robotic and like I'm just either paying attention to my calendar or doing what I did yesterday. Just sort of like pattern interrupt that. Another way is to take a sabbatical.
Hmm.
So take 1 to 3 months off sometime in adulthood. If you're going to work 500 months and you're committed to full-time employment, I think 1 to 3 months would not be that hard to find. People have these massive, expensive weddings and they somehow figure a way to pull it off, but they cannot figure out a way to celebrate life and lean into their own like existence and leisure and reconnect with what matters to them. I think it's more important. So, like finding space in your life to do things like that. But yeah, I often just say, like, start with wandering, take a walk without a destination. Another thing you can do is remember what you used to do in a random day when you had free time as a kid and go do that as an adult. Do you have something that pops up? It looks like you're thinking of something.
I remember when we used to go to vacation, me and my brother, we would just play catch baseball in the
Yeah.
beach.
When's the last time you played catch?
Oof, it's been with him. It's been at least 2 years.
Yeah, go do that and just see how it feels. It'll probably be really fun.
Yeah, it's one of the most
Um,
enjoyable things. Yeah.
and I think the hard thing for young people, I just had a child. I'm 38. I'm a bit older to become a dad. And one thing I'm realizing now, spending time around her, is I'm so playful around her. It's so fun. I'm so silly. And people are having kids later, so we've lost this connection. We have
Yeah.
this big gap of like serious achievement based in adulthood where we forget to be silly and play and do all these things.
Wow. Yeah, and just the silliness of it all paradoxically also fuels your creative. I feel like it also fuels your outputs in terms of what you're writing and expressing, and also not only that, that's just the aftershock. That's the externality. That's not the
Yeah.
intent. I'm not gonna play with my kid just to because it'll fuel my creativity.
Yeah.
It does that.
Yeah, you just play to play.
Exactly. And I don't like what you say. Just is brilliant because it. I don't know when exactly for me personally, but I feel like many people just lost that track. Just live to live or do things for the sake of doing things. Like when we were kids, and it's very interesting because when we were kids, I mean, we were not trying to be leaders of the world or trying to, dictate how other people
Yeah.
should live. But other people would, whenever I don't know, Paul, but when people see your son, is it daughter or is it
Daughter.
your daughter? When they see her, do they smile or they just
Of
scare and
course. Yeah.
they're a light of they're just living life. And so
Well,
why?
it's interesting though. Some people are completely oblivious to children, and I wonder if this is like some cultural like weird moment where just people aren't having enough kids.
Wow.
Yeah, some people are just completely oblivious, but then some people are just like, "Oh my God, a kid, so amazing." Um, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a very interesting point. The lack of kids. But what I'm trying to say is that while we're just doing life for doing life, we're expressing this energy out of us, and all of the sudden the script just runs its course, let's say, and I just started embracing a life of achievement, of life of titles, and a life of putting my diplomas on the wall. And those diplomas, I've spoke with Kyle Kowalski in the show previously. He writes a blog called Slow, which is like intentional living,
yeah, yeah.
slow.
I
He's
love
really
Kyle.
good. Yeah, he's the best. And why I told him is that I would rather exchange all of those titles, all of those diplomas for just pictures with my family, pictures with my community, memories. Those just transcend. And when the light bulb hit for me, I woke up one day in the like, midnight, and all of a sudden I just like an eureka moment. I thought, would I be doing this all my like if I knew I had only 1 year left? Would I be doing what I'm doing now? And it was an instant no, and I just couldn't turn it back. He was like, I can't just
Yeah,
keep doing that hypocritical game of impressing others. I need to figure out what I want to do. What it is that if you ask me that question again, what would I answer? And like you said, a sabbatical part of it all, just trying to. A lot of people have been reaching out to me because they know I'm like in this, void in the universe, not having a job and just figuring out it's. I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm taking time for me in this path because I don't see any. If I don't do it now, is it going to be when I have a midlife
yeah.
crisis or? And then my question for you after all of this, walking, it's one of the biggest pressures is the extrinsic pressure, the social pressure that's, trying to tell you you should do this, you should do that. How are you, you're 6 years in it right now, but when you're in
Yeah.
the beginning stages, Paul, how are you able to handle those, those little cues that people would say like, hey, so when are you getting back in the boat again? When are you getting in the train?
I've never been too worried about what other people think, but it does hurt when people criticize my path. I think early on I wanted to defend my path and like sort of prove that I was right. But I've realized that most of what's happening is other people are just really anxious when they see alternatives to their life and stressed and have fear. And it's mostly about them, um, which is that I've just stopped trying to convince people.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it bothered me at first, but most people are just scared. And I have fears. The thing is, just on this path, I'm more aware of my fears and have to grapple with them. But yeah, I think if you really care about what people think, you should just do what you think other people want you to do.
Hmm. Yeah, precisely.
Like people always say, like, "Well, how do you like do this path and still have like not like disappoint your parents?" It's like, I don't know. You're probably going to disappoint people. You're going to stress people out. You're going to make people envious of you, and they're going to be like weirdly resentful of your life. All these weird things happen when you take an unconventional path, and it's just part of the cost you pay.
Hmm. Wow. That's what you said right now, Paul, of being aware of one's fears, of your own fears. I think that's also part of the big theme why people and why I started also to really dive deep into work, because part of giving space to yourself is being aware
Yeah.
of these fears, being aware of also like existential questions like what am I doing here in this blue marble? Like an evolved ape, and I'm trying to wear a suit and tie and pretend I have everything figured out. We don't have that time to think about those themes when we're, in the 9 to 5, 40-hour week. There's no time to reflect on our own humanity.
How how long are you into your sabbatical?
It's been almost, so my last day was the it was April 1st.
Okay, so like 2.5 months. Are you now like how long did it take you to really ease into like going slower and feeling more comfortable?
So the first weeks were kind of like the hard part of it all, because it was like, okay,
Yeah.
so now I'm not ready to now I don't have to get ready to go to work, my routine, all of that, and just like the moving parts, the puzzle were just confusing. And I can't say that right now I'm 100% in it yet. I think I'm just trying to be aware of why is it that I'm not yet 100% in it.
Yeah.
And but I'm getting there. And like you say, a lot of the things that you touch on, which are trying not to make this sabbatical a job in itself, trying to just add projects or just keep myself busy. I'm not trying to do that, but rather is trying to do these kind of conversations that really interest me. I'm very curious to have you on the show, and also trying to explore those ideas that may come up. Like for example, I've been to so many baseball games this past month. I can't tell you, with so many different friends, and I was so close to the baseball field in my previous job, and I just was drained. I didn't want to go. It's my favorite
Yeah.
sport, and all of a sudden that emerges, that I love that sport. So
I bet that's another childhood thing, right?
yeah.
This is a thing that emerges in people's sabbaticals. I call them forgotten hobbies
Mhm.
or forgotten interests. It's often things from childhood that start reemerging organically. And then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I forgot I loved baseball."
Yeah. Yeah, you forget a lot of things, and those moments where just life itself can play its own curse, and us not trying to cling onto a script, like you say, which is very
Yeah.
difficult. It's very difficult. And Paul, so we've discussed a lot of things revolving this kind of like the in between and also the trajectory, but I would like to get into the future of work, and perhaps one of the first questions that we can get into is, what is the first flaw that you find about the current workplace, the current state of how we see work itself, and how do you think we could like try to fix it?
Yeah, I actually think that's the wrong frame. I reject that framing. I think everyone looks at things as like broken, right? The current world of work is an emergent system. It's constantly changing. The world of work is totally different than it was 20 years ago. 20 years from now, it's going to be totally different. So I think often when people are like, oh, capitalism is the worst, it produces all these bad situations. It's like there is no capitalism. Capitalism is just a set of incentives that exist, our current paradigm, and it's constantly evolving and changing through human action, right? And often our workplace is a emergent order of our human desires and interests and motivations, right? So oftentimes when we're criticizing work, we're just criticizing our natural human nature,
Hmm.
right? So I think the current world of work is way better than it was 40 years ago. Most people would not want to go back to the 1980s and work in a similar job. It would not be enjoyable. There'd be a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of inefficiency. There'd be a lot of sexism. There'd be a lot of like, don't be your full self at work. I think it'd be intolerable for most people. Now, I think the challenge of today's work is people are so desperate to find a place. They want to find a home. They want to find a connection to work. And I think the challenge is it's so hard to find that in a job container.
Hmm.
And I think what's enabled me to be happier with my work and my path is I've sort of let go of like ever finding a dream situation. For me, it's just finding a good enough situation. I like writing. I have enough space to do it. I have to do a bunch of stuff like I like but don't love to make money. And that's like good enough, feels sustainable, and is like a good setup for my current life.
That's
Um, I think I was most unhappy when I was trying to find a dream job.
yeah. That's mostly where a lot of people find themselves, trying to find that dream job.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think, oh, if I do what I love and make money from it, everything will be great. Now, finding that in a job is incredibly hard because jobs mean you have to do administrative stuff. You have to play political games. You're like reacting to the actual environment you're in. It's just really, really hard to find that. And we've sort of misled a generation of people telling them, oh, you can find meaningful work in a job. And all these companies are promising it. Do the most meaningful work of your career. That's what Facebook's career page says. Now, people go work at Facebook and they enjoy it maybe for a year or two. It's challenging, it's new, you're learning a lot. But then after a couple of years, it's like, oh my gosh, the bureaucracy, the amount of teams, the performance reviews, the like stuff I have to do to get promoted, it's drains people's soul, right? So you
Hmm.
might do your most meaningful work of your career like 10 of the hours of the week, but it's the other 30 hours of the week that are going to be really hard to live with.
Yeah. And this is very interesting because a lot of we've been putting a lot of of energy into the workplace, into our work, into our
Yeah.
careers, that what you say is just it's taking a lot of our bandwidth. And I remember listening to Simon Sinek say something along the lines of, before the previous uh, versions of work, people would have community, would have neighbors, they would have, other activities. But now it seems that everything that we're asking for our job is we need to have that community there, we need to have the job, we have to have that income, the friends, all of that has to be involved in that place. And then all of a sudden, just the shock of finding that work is in everything, although we are investing most of our energy in it. So this dissonance between, what we're trying to do in the workplace and just the reality
Yeah.
of honestly, I really enjoyed being with my peers in my work, and I thought they were my friends. but there were some themes that I was just being thrown that I was saying, no, a friend wouldn't do this, you know?
Yeah, it's people will behave based on the incentives they're given, right? Um, a lot of people in the workplace would say like, "Oh, my family's first," but then they get a promotion or offered a massive raise, and they're like, "Well, you have to work more," and they'll be like, "Well, this is the best thing I can do for my family." And it's like there's a lot of mental jujitsu that happens to make that and hold those beliefs in your head.
Yeah.
I struggle with not having like consistency between what I claim to care about and what I'm actually doing with my time. And I ultimately found that like full-time work was not for me, right? And I'm not writing for the people who are like, well, you can do it because of this, or you don't understand how expensive life is. Like, those people shouldn't follow my stuff. They shouldn't read my stuff. They should find other people to follow. I'm writing for the people like you that are like, I don't know if I can make that path work either. And I just want like different ideas of how people are making it work on unconventional paths, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the future of work seems that it's going to be very revolved around, like you say, a more holistic approach, trying to remove all of the eggs in the workplace basket of life and just trying to figure out who we can be in this world and who we are already. Because it seems that those kind of questions, like the ones we were talking previously, you know, of what am I doing here? What is work for me? Why am I working? They emerge 40 years after we work and grind and, you know, just
Yeah.
retire, you know, like it's this investment of time. Hey, Alex, I'll tell you this. You're going to have a great career, but for 40 years, you're not going to think about your humanity. You're just going to be in autopilot mode. And then,
Yeah.
you know, hopefully you can keep that, like I mentioned previously, that space between your true self and the mask that you're playing the games. And when you retire, you can discover this one again, your true self. You can reconnect with it. And what happens, I just envision myself when I'm 60, knock on wood, hopefully I'll get there. I just envision myself, if I couldn't handle 2 years of playing political games and this
Yeah.
prestige bug, what does it like? No
Yeah.
one
You'll
in there.
destroy yourself.
Yeah, like for 40 years, I won't even find myself. And then
Right.
when I retire, I'll just have a nervous breakdown with chronic illnesses, and I'm gonna check out. And that seems to be a lot of what's happening with retirees now. I've done some research with, you know, people who retire from Boeing and these really high um, you know, high execution, high leverage positions. They retire, they get their pensions, and they don't last more than a year or 2 years after retirement. They're
Yeah.
gone.
It's tough. Um, I think it's like I said before, we're just becoming more aware of the holistic value of a human life, right? If we can't move, what is life? If we can't laugh and be present, what is life? If we can't um, be happy and not have depression, what is life, right? And yeah, it's all this deferred life plan. I mean, I'm just following on people like Tim Ferriss who've been talking about this for 15 years.
Yeah.
The deferred life plan only works if everyone else is doing it and nobody talks about what they're giving up. But now people have started talking about what they're giving up, and it's becoming too painfully obvious to people that this is a bad strategy for life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a bad strategy, like you say. It's just, it doesn't make sense for me. It just doesn't make sense that I will be willing to invest 40 years of autopilot when I, knock on wood, like I will only have like hopefully 120 years in on Earth, which is nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's good. It's encouraging to see that we're rejecting these invisible scripts, like you say, in terms of being an autopilot mode, and also paradoxically, when you embraced your calling, let's say you're writing your book, Pathless Path, that's resonating in 1,000 times more that it could when, you would have embraced the corporate or the conventional
Yeah.
path, which is crazy.
Well, I think this is the upshot of sharing your ideas is like you might actually find other people. I think for me, the biggest benefit of sharing my ideas has not been any sort of like rewards, achievements, or recognition. It's been actually just finding other people like you who are asking the same questions. And then you just don't feel as alone.
Yeah.
And that can make your journey a little more um, not crazy to pursue.
And paradoxically, Paul, like you're gonna receive the recognitions, all of those things as an externality because your work is so true, and you're not even playing. You're not trying to get to that point, but people are praising
Maybe.
your.
Yeah, I think I just want to push back on this. Like, I'm not sure you can live a life expecting that, oh, if I work hard and commit to stuff over the long term, I'll be recognized.
No,
I don't know if you'll be able to. I think, but what I'm saying is that was the energy I had for years, is like, I'm doing this because I think it matters. And I do think that can lead to some magic in the universe. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, I'm still adjusting. I think my identity is lagging some of the recognition and um attention I've received because of my book.
yeah, yeah, and it's what I'm trying to say is exactly that. It if you would have envisioned, just trying to figure out your true self, and
Yeah.
if I would have told you, a lot of people around the entire globe would have seen your work and they would just say thank you, and you wouldn't. It came automatic, for the sake of exploring your own
Yeah.
ideas, which that's the most insane part, that a lot of people that I'm seeing now that are embracing their creativity, they're or trying to explore that creativity, that natural creativity that they have, or their true colors in a way. It's the best way that you can give life to others. For example, I've had Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson on the show the previous month, and I asked him. There were so many interviews that he had where he was told by other people, like around my age, around the 20s, that a person of his intellect cannot be an astrophysicist. He needs to be a leader. He needs to be someone. And those kind of questions, like imagine if Dr. Tyson would have said, yes, you're right. I think I should do something else and not follow his own heart, which is trying to pursue the meaning of stars and trying to figure out what's happening in the
Yeah.
universe. And paradoxically, when he followed his heart, his own interests, he became one of the most popular astrophysicists in the world. That's
Yeah.
that's the that's the cue that
It's
I'm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's his name? I'm forgetting the guy, the Joseph Campbell. He says, "Save the world, save yourself to save the world."
Right.
Right. Um, and the challenge is you often have to burn down yourself to let a new person emerge, and um, that is a journey worth going on, and that I think is what I'm writing about. It might suck, but it might be awesome.
And within this sock, within that, the awesome emerges. Like it's just
Yeah,
amazing that the diamond that is Pathless Path emerged from. You I don't really can say that I've lived and I can empathize in that way with you, but the struggles that you found yourself in, they like I try to see the carbon, the coal, and then you saw the diamond in it, the
yeah,
treasure emerged, which is amazing. So Paul, there's just so many things that we can explore and that we've explored. Maybe we can start trying to close the conversation in terms of, you know when you first saw the leap of faith that you were taking, when you first you would try to explore this new path of your life, there were some themes that you discussed in the Pathless Path that revolve around the guilt, of not playing the same game of others,
Yeah.
the FOMO, and also the being bitten by the prestige bug, like trying to get rid of that. So, if you could just go back in time right now with all of the knowledge that you have, and have a convo with Paul, what were some of the things that you could just try to ask Paul on that moment, and also, not give them advice in a way, but also, how would you look to Paul when you started your journey?
Um, I was very happy at the beginning of my journey. So I I think a big theme for me was just exploring myself, becoming more comfortable with emotions and feeling what I'm really feeling, um, getting to know my body. And I think I'd probably just point myself in the direction of, hey, explore more, go outside your comfort zone. I don't think I did that enough when I'm young. And yeah, I think it'd just be cool just to see uh, the parts where I was feeling alive and energized and see that again and see like, oh yeah, I did like parts of this path. It was fun. I did like the work. But yeah, it faded and I think I wish I left my path earlier. But it took me just a painfully long time to become more self-aware. And I think I wish I had started that journey a little earlier.
Hmm. Paul, well, even though maybe your journey didn't begin as early as you wanted to, I'm grateful that it started at the first place, because how life is really crazy, but your ideas really do come at a moment in my life where these inflection points are happening. And so I appreciate you taking that leap of faith and embracing what your heart and intuition told you. And also, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully we can have more conversations in the future, Paul.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate your curiosity and hope you keep sharing and having conversations.
Thank you. Take care.